Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 3, Episode 2 of The Boys. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's focus on Butcher's side of things, which I think is so fascinating. The fact is that opening sequence where, it's Homelander's birthday, and it's like, we're celebrating it, and here's a long list of people who are here, including the cast of Riverdale. I love that. But Butcher, at first I was like, is this just in your head? I didn't even think it was just going to be a dream sequence, but I thought it was all in his head when he was contemplating whether or not he was going to take the V-24, and, the Homelander being like, you want to really do that? Are you really going to, how far will you go? And he was like, I can go pretty far if it means kind of ending all of this. And then there's the kid who's like, right, don't do this. Doesn't have a name, but you can only assume that was his brother who we learned about last season. I didn't realize his brother, I guess it's been a couple years, but I didn't realize his brother was so young when he died. If that is who that is, which, like I said, I'm assuming it has to be, because it has to be someone to kind of try and talk him off the edge, but it seems Butcher's still reluctant to use the V-24 in this whole situation. It's not just the side effects, because I think on some level Butcher probably feels like he kind of doesn't have much to live for. All he has is this fight, so in the end, if he has to sacrifice himself for that fight, then so be it. But it's just the knowing, like, I'll become the thing I hate in order to battle them. It's just what he can't break himself of. So obviously he goes after Gunpowder this episode, while Kimiko and Frenchie go after Crimson Countess, trying to find out more about Soldier Boy. Because initially Butcher stops by MM's place, and it does seem like, kind of like I thought, the whole Soldier Boy thing reopened some old wounds for him. And Butcher does feel bad, because yes, everyone is a means to an end to him, but when he looks at MM and everything with Janine, and he realizes, like, right, you don't want to follow the same footsteps as your father. Your father wasn't, he says, like, his dad died slumped over a desk, so I guess it's like he worked himself so hard. Like, granted, could be Vought got to him, poisoned him for all we know, but it could just be like his body just gave out because he was running so hot for so long, hatred for trying to, and, was so driven by this battle against Vought that his body just finally gave out. Either way, he doesn't want that. It's so much of himself he's kind of taken away from his daughter, and he wants to be there for her in the long run. And Butcher recognizes that, and I think maybe it plays a part in a little bit with his relationship with Ryan, because he had talked to Ryan earlier in the episode, and Ryan was like, "Are you mad with me?" He's like, No, sorry. It's just, he's like, right, your mom, I promised your mom that I was going to take care of you, and I always will. And that put a smile on Ryan. So he's like, okay, I'm, like, glad to know that he still has Butcher in his corner, that he still has someone that is essentially family. But I think that all resonated with him, and he goes like, right, you're doing a really good job of her. So he's happy that MM helped him, but he's also fine with, like, giving MM his space. It's like, right, you're out of this fight, gave me the information I need, I don't want to drag you into this, because this is my fight, it's all consuming, and you have an opportunity to get out, I'm choosing not to get out, so who am I to take that away from you? I selfishly dragged you back into this at the beginning of the series, so but nevertheless, his run-in with Gunsmoke was interesting, who's played by Sean Patrick Flannery. The thing I best know him from is the Boondock Saints movies. That whole sequence was interesting. It's like, he shows up at the place, and it's like, sorry. And he goes through a metal detector, and he has a gun. The security guy was like, that's a nice piece. Going through, you're like, oh, man. Once again, show just happens to be super timely. Obviously, this is a conversation that's kicked up even more recently with with more recent events. But to be fair, like, America's had this. This has been a conversation time and time again. It's always been something that resurfaces every once in a while when it comes to, like, gun-related stuff, like gun rights and stuff like that. So, and Butcher going around, like, it seems like there's kids drawing in coloring books about guns, kids learning about guns and such, and obviously Gunpowder leaning into the whole aspect of, like, right, if you're not careful, they're going to try it. Like, you take someone like Dakota, referencing, Bob. I actually don't get what the Dakota in his name, maybe because he's so left-wing, so left liberal side of things, that Is Dakota known to be very liberal or something like that? I don't know what that's in reference to, because they referenced it last episode that they started calling him Dakota, but I don't know. That's kind of his nickname, but it's like, right, he'll take your guns from you, yada yada, so on and so forth. There's even that theme song that's playing at this convention of sorts in the background too, so that's interesting. But also, what was it? Oh, make sure you pick up these particular guns. Use the promo code Gunpowder. Once again, it's too true to real life in certain regards. Just like the whole, like, oh, use the promo code and stuff like that. Just like, I was like, oh man, that's too real. But I thought it was interesting how they played into the whole, like, oh yeah, you were a sidekick to Soldier Boy, like, oh, he was twiddling you a little bit. It's kind of how Butcher puts it. I was like, oh wow. And he's like, man, I'm tired of this whole thing about sidekicks most likely getting molested by their partners. I mean, that is, I don't know if every superhero's ever had to deal with that, like, but ever since I was a kid, I've always heard the jokes people have made about, like, oh, Batman and Robin, like that whole thing of like, oh, Batman's most likely diddling Robin. That's always been a thing. So I think it's so interesting that this show can kind of tackle that a little bit. And he kept being like, no, nothing happened. I was like, are we going to find out Soldier Boy is a disgusting piece of shit like that? It's like, no. Well, as Gunpowder puts it later on, it's like, right, he slapped me around. It was more so hazing, but it kind of got out of hand sometimes. I guess because just maybe his super strength or just maybe him being super aggro led to that. Whatever the case may be. Butcher's like, oh, I'll put it out there into the world. But he's like, I don't care what you're going to do because it's not true. And it's not going to do anything. So that didn't work. And it eventually leads to a gun battle in the parking lot. Because at first I was like, is he going to end up being like... And it turns out he's kind of like Peacemaker, Bloodsport, and Deadshot. Which, funny enough, those characters are kind of all the same. I mean, obviously they made the whole joke in the Suicide Squad how Peacemaker and Bloodsport are basically do the exact same thing. I guess Gunpowder would be more Peacemaker than either one of the... More Peacemaker than even Deadshot or oh god, I just said his name. Deadshot or Bloodsport. He's a lot, probably leans more towards like a Peacemaker, but because the way he could like curve the bullets, Wanted style, because the moment he could just see Butcher in the miniature, I was like, how that's going to play out. Ricocheting the bullet like that was pretty dope, and just cutting his face. So that kind of sucked. But luckily got out of that situation alive. And it's not till later on when he's playing that video that Ryan has. It's, I guess, like all he has left of his mom is like maybe that single voicemail, or maybe there's multiple voicemails. But it's a video that and it's kind of sweet knowing that he still makes those. Because I guess it's always been like his little passion project, and it also helps him deal with everything. He even says like the nights he can't sleep, that video helps him. And obviously for Butcher, it's like hearing Becca's voice one more time. Because he even said at the beginning when he was talking to, in the dream when he was talking to Homelander, that, like, right, Becca wouldn't care what I do because she's dead. She's not around anymore. And hearing that and knowing, like, right, Ryan put all this passion into it and stuff, I got to focus more so on my promise, so I can't be so driven by going as far as I am. I want to do better. I want to be a better person for his sake. So I think that's what was going to pull him away until Huey called him up, and we'll focus on Huey's stuff later, but I think that's what really pushed him over the edge of just like, he was ready to kind of take those few steps off. And maybe if Huey hadn't told him what he told him, maybe it wouldn't have set him back on the path. He wouldn't have been all gun-ho and said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Because he was ready to step off, finally, but Huey gave him the green light. That's all he needed, was someone to give him extra motivation, more reason to jump back into the fight. Turn this into the bloody, knuckled battle that it's meant to be. So, I just thought that was fascinating. So he shows up and goes up against Gunsmoke. I wonder, I guess not. We've never really gotten into the ins and outs of how the powers exactly work. Like, what I mean is it a Misfits thing of like, oh, your powers being what they are kind of representing of your personality to some extent, or not? The fact is he has the heat vision and the superhuman strength and he's bulletproof. It's like, yeah, I think ironically enough, you're going to be like Homelander, but maybe on some level, it's like, right, I need to become what I hate the most. Out of any suit, he hates Homelander the most, but it's like, right, you want to go toe-to-toe with someone that's essentially a god, you got to, like, go god blow for blow, so it's kind of like, maybe on some psychological level, he chose that. I don't know if it really works like that. I think it seems like every ability's random. I don't think, but like I said, I'm pulling that from Misfits because a lot of those powers reflect each person's personality in that show. So I was wondering if the correlations there, because they've never really gotten into, is there, like, why do people get the abilities they do? Is it just kind of a random gamble, or is there something deeper to it that we've never really tackled before? I wonder, is that something even the comics have ever tackled? It's probably like, no, you get powers. That's all it is. Some people have similar powers. Some powers overlap, in some regards, like maybe being bulletproof and such, but still. Butcher beating the crap out of him, but it turns out even he doesn't know about what happened to Soldier Boy. He was like 14 at the time. He was just a kid himself, so he's like, I have no idea what went down, so... But despite everything, Butcher says that line of, you might have told me everything you know, but it doesn't change anything. Well, he also dropped a nugget of information. Apparently, Payback worked with Mallory. So I'm assuming maybe this is before she was like... Because we never found out what it was exactly that pushed Mallory to be like anti-soups. Be all about that. Obviously, when like Frenchie met her, like obviously we got that flashback last season, but... Other than that, we never really gotten into, like, why Mallory went down this path. And maybe we'll kind of touch on that a little bit this season. But she was working with them. So maybe Vought and the CIA were on better terms back then until she found out how much of an asshole Soups were. And she became very much like Butcher in that regard. So maybe that changed. Because, I mean, everyone else started off super positive about heroes until they all had their personal experience. Obviously, the Lamplighter thing happened so much later on. She was already anti-Soups well before the Lamplighter thing happened. So what happened after this whole, maybe like whatever went down in Nicaragua is what settled it, because that's the last place they were before everything kind of went down. So maybe that's what set her down that path. The fact that she's never mentioned it either. And so I'm wondering, is that supposed to mean, like, right, what I thought, like, Vought had something to do with the whole Soldier Boy thing is, like, maybe, like, him not being dead. I'm like, is Valerie the one that had something to do with that then? Is it kind of like her hidden secret, her little trump card that she's hidden from not only Butcher and them, but the others? Like, I mean, I don't know. Because I think Butcher's going to find that interesting. Like, you're supposed to be anti-soup like me, yet you worked with them. So, once again, even he wasn't all anti-soups at all the time. Like, that just happened after the whole Becca thing. But either way, he proceeded to beat the ever-living crap out of Gunpowder, because it's like, right, once again, that line of the only good soup is a dead soup. Once again, I will also say it isn't his direct words. It was Starlight quoting him, but he's like, your word's not mine, but the sentiment still reigns true for him. And he's starting to I thought we were going to go full-blown, like, he was going to bash his head in. He was kind of in that process until his heat vision kicked in and he just sliced his brain in half. So, that was interesting. You kind of felt bad for the guy a little bit there, so... another angle to this is the whole Kimiko and Frenchie who went to go see Crimson Countess, who's played by, what's her name? Lauren Holden from The Walking Dead. I was like, because she's in the trailer for a little bit. It's part of the sequence that we get in this trailer. In this episode, but I didn't recognize her. Obviously, she's probably, I don't know if that's like her hair. I'd assume that's a wig and the mask. I just didn't recognize her. But that performance she's putting on, obviously we learned a little bit more about Soldier Boy, and just everyone's excited about everything, and just Frenchie's the one just kind of eyes roll, just like, oh my god, get me out of this place. I love it. What was it? BLM, BLTs, you're like, Jesus. Woke Walk, and LGB turkey leg. And because the whole thing's about, brave Maeve. It's like, right, we're continuing to kind of push and exploit Maeve's sexuality to kind of push this narrative forward, and merchandise around it, still. So she still got that, like, shoved in her face time and time again. So I think that's interesting. But, Kimiko's all about the place. She's actually enjoying it, which even Frenchie's like, you want to go on a ride that's, that not only has to deal with Supes that people were trying to take down, this one in particular is about Homelander, the biggest sociopath of them all, but for her, it's more so like, right, her and her brother never had an opportunity to enjoy it, and she even sees these kids in their brother and sister kind of enjoying themselves, and she really enjoyed, like, she was really happy to hear Crimson Countess sing and everything, even later on, and the Countess is showing her, like, oh yeah, you want to hear a new song I'm working on? It's like, oh, chimps don't cry. I wonder, is that true that they actually don't cry? She's like, but they cry on the inside. And even Kimiko being like, oh, she's so nice. And Frenchie's like, she's nuts because she's got all these like chimp things, so she's kind of obsessed with chimps. But yeah, she ended up getting away, blowing up that poor guy in the Homelander costume, traumatizing everyone. That's going to be a little bit of a PR nightmare. And for what sucks for Kimiko is, I guess it's like, because she doesn't have her, she hasn't talked since she was a kid because of the trauma of just everything, their parents getting killed and everything that her and her brother were put through working with that terrorist group, that she's lost her voice and she wants to be able to sing because it'd be kind of like getting a little bit of herself back. And that's what this is all about. Frenchie later on was like, oh, we're going to go to Six Flags, we're going to get on this roller coaster until we puke. But for her, it's not about the roller coaster. It's just the fact is that her and her brother never had a childhood, and now she blames herself because those siblings at that place, their childhood is ruined for them. They're never going to be normal. They're never going to be okay. But Frenchie's like, that's not on you. But for her, it's just a reminder of no matter what she does, as long as this is, as the Soup's, power is flowing through her veins, she'll never be a normal girl. She's like, I'm broken, and I don't think I can ever be fixed. And that's why I'm thinking she's thinking, like, right, with the music and everything, I think she thinks that she could sing again. It's like reclaiming who she used to be. She can be herself again and not just be this silent person who has to, use the language her and her brother came up with to communicate. And she could be herself by getting her voice back. And I think that's what this is kind of really all about. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. So that's kind of really heartbreaking. You feel bad for Kimiko that she herself feels cursed, so. Then we also had the whole MM situation where he's getting more and more obsessed with the Soldier Boy stuff. Now that spark's been... I mean, it was already there before Butcher got to him, but Butcher just sent it in an overdrive, bringing up the name in general. And ultimately, he's going through all those papers. I could be mistaken, but I'm assuming they were like articles written by his dad, because it's basically every terrible thing Soldier Boy's ever done. He was trying to take down some bad guys. Apparently, like 20 people were dead. I don't know whether they were just 100% bad guys, but it was like 20 were killed, over a dozen were injured or something like that. There was other talks about his brutality, his attempt to stop a car thief ended up with a family in a crossfire. So it's just once again that collateral damage, and it seemed like he was one of those people that kind of didn't care, just did whatever he wanted to. It was mainly, once again, Vought always protecting its quote-unquote assets, so he had a large corporation backing him that would stop anything from coming his way. And the fact is he continued, like, there's so many articles about it. It's like, the fact is he never stopped, he never cared, like, it just, I think, kind of shows you how little he viewed human life, maybe. Or maybe he just felt himself so important that he was above such trivial things. It's like, right, I'm taking down the bad guy and it's for the greater good. So who cares if a few people get hurt or maimed or killed in the process? Once again, a deep parallel you can make between Homelander and Soldier Boy in that regard. But MM was so frustrated and triggered by all of this that even to the point he's smashing the fire detector in front of Janine, and she's scared, but she still walks up and hugs him because she's like, right, I might have been freaked out for a little bit, but it's like, right, you are my dad. And for him, he goes to talk to Marvin. I mean, God, he is Marvin, jeez. He goes to talk to Monique about everything. He's like, I've tried my best, I've even upped my medicine. And she's like, right, I know what you're going through, and the fact is that I shouldn't have tried to change you, that this is a part of you, so go get shit done, get it settled, and you come back, and your daughter's going to be here waiting for you. And I thought was a very poignant thing for him to say, do not tell Janine about what I've been through, about my dad and everything, because he's scared that if she knows the truth about superheroes and all that, the illness that went from his dad to him could pass to his daughter, and he doesn't want that. what became his fight. He doesn't want that to become her. He wants to keep her as far away from this as possible. So we'll see how things gonna go on that front. Because she even apologizes. Monique saying like, "I'm sorry that I can't be with you, and I'm sorry the pain that causes you, but you need to go back to Butcher and put an end to this, because I can't like try and make you into someone that you're not. Like, obviously this is a fire that you've had in you for a long time that I've kind of tried to smother to kind of make you fit more what we need to be as a family. But it's like, right, this is something you need to do. It's important. It's controlling you. The fact is you're like heavily medicating yourself just to compensate to be who I need you to be. Like, I didn't know I was going to end up my wants in that regard. I didn't know going to push him down that way, this route. I think it's kind of maybe the thought process she has with all of this. I love the whole thing with A-Train, that he's like, right, you know, I might not be the fastest of that person I was, but I have more to me than my speed. And they're like, yeah, what is it? He's like, yeah, I'm a strong black man. He's like, isn't that right, Seth? And Seth is sitting there like, yep. You could tell like the entire time he's giving the pitch, he doesn't believe in it at all. And it's like, oh, an A-Train to Africa. You're like, oh God. And then like the next, what was it? The Passage or something like that. And then Ashley like, wait, is that a video game about the slave trade? He's like, yeah, there's some powerful stuff to get to Gen Z. You're just like, oh God, A-Train. I also love that Ashley has also Ashley. I love that. That's like, I think I was reading that that's actually the character's name. I love it. Because it feels almost befitting that, of course, Ashley would have like an assistant of some sort named Ashley too. It's just only befitting. Which I'm almost scared about. Like, please don't tell me that our Ashley that we've come to know these past 2 seasons is going to die at some point, or maybe even by the end of the season, and also Ashley becomes the only Ashley. Or maybe also Ashley ends up taking the fall and ends up becoming the Ashley that dies, and luckily we get to keep our Ashley. I prefer neither one of them to die, but I'm scared for Ashley every time. I'm like, that this business is going to be the death of her. Just how stressful it is. But, yeah, A-Train, you know, Ashley's trying to appease A-Train. Like, oh my God, this idea of yours is great. We'll sit on it. But Seth is like, no, they hated it. And I love Seth calls him out. He's like, yeah, you've never cared about being black, dude. Like, I know that. She knows that. The people in, even the people in Africa know that. And I love that A-Train's retort was, well, you don't have a dick. I was like, come on, dude. That's an extremely low blow, especially knowing the dramatic way he lost his dick. Like, it's so messed up for you to use that against him. But it's like, yeah, because A-Train's trying to rebrand himself, because he's like, right, I can't be the fastest man alive. That's why he keeps pushing off that, because he lucked out that his competition ended up getting his head blown up last season, so that kind of made things a little easier on him. But he's not who he used to be, so he's trying to find something else to kind of rally people around him. We even seen a commercial how far that, I mean, not the commercial, we saw that in the trailer, like how far he's going to push that. We'll talk about it when we get to that scene in the show, but it's going to be interesting. I even love that he says screw it, and he still shows up. I mean, he didn't say anything. He just showed up in the new outfit at the birthday celebration, but that was about it. It could have been a lot worse, but still. Which, speaking of the birthday celebration, I love that it's such a big announcement for Homelander. It's such a big, extravagant thing, and he's kind of taking a little bit more control of the whole thing. And I love that he goes to Stormfront, and he's like, hey, sweetie, guess what day it is? It's a special day. It's my birthday, silly. And you're just like, oh, you legitimately are a man-child. You were stunted. You were put through so much torture and terrible stuff. I mean, we even got, like, whether it would be considered canonical, we got a glimpse, at least some idea of everything he went through. We got a little bit of it in the past seasons, but also we got a better look at it in the season finale of The Boys Presents Diabolical. Just kind of everything that the scientists and everything put him through, testing the limits of what he can do, what he can take, and what he's capable of. But Stormfront can't hear him or isn't really responding. And he's like, just blink if you wish me a happy birthday. He's like, I'll talk to you later, and walks away. And she turns and she blinks her eye, and then a tear rolls. You're like, oh, you actually feel a little bad. I kind of felt bad for her last episode. But yeah, but like this episode, I was like, oh, that's kind of sweet. And then you had to go, yeah, but she's a Nazi. It's like, yeah, can't forget that. Nazi, big O Nazi with a capital N, you know, so, but he's trying to force, Starlight to sing him happy birthday. It's like, no, I'm gonna do this. And she's like, right, you're just trying to force me into a position where I don't really look like co-captain material. This is just you trying to make me seem, trying to tear her down a little bit. It's kind of, I think, his not so subtle payback, but I love that Edgar's on Starlight's side because it's a strategic move. He's backing Starlight because she has the best positive reception. If he can get behind her, it just kind of it lightens the blow of the whole Stormfront thing to some extent when Starlight is at the forefront, especially because she was considered a traitor, and then it was like, no, she's been acquitted. I'm so proud of you. All the spiel that Homelander gave at the end of season 2 about her, when it's like, oh yeah, Stormfront's been revealed to be who she is. So, but Edgar's like, yeah, people are like 76% more likely to watch this if she's doing things her way. People are 53% more likely to DVR this because of you. So it's like, oh God, throwing the numbers his way, and just every time it comes to Edgar knows how to stick that dagger in just a little deeper and twist it when it comes to Homelander. It's like, once again, you think he'd be a little freaked out, but for Edgar, it's like, once again, it's like, right, you're a big man, baby. I'm not scared of you despite what you can do, because you wouldn't dare go against me because it wouldn't work out for you in the long run. So I guess that's why Edgar's so okay with talking mad shit and making Homelander bend to his will, because Homelander doesn't have much of a retort. He's been very placated because all the standing up to Edgar, because he was able to switch the narrative and take control of things and kind of come out on top and seem great after the whole Compound V fiasco. But now it's back. Now everything's right with the world, and Edgar's in charge again, and just kind of smacking Homelander around a little bit, being like, no, do what I say. And him going to try and save that girl, was it Chelsea, who was going to jump? He's like, right, if you do jump, I'm going to just save you, so it's fine. He's like, you don't want to go to hell, right? She's like, but I'm Jewish. And he was kind of like, okay. But then he gets the sad news that Stormfront killed herself. I was like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Because at first I was like, okay, so with the whole introduction of V24 and potentially Butcher taking it, because he hadn't taken it at that point in the episode, I was like, wait, is he going to be the one that, I was like, well, how would he get to Stormfront? Because she is in the tower, it wouldn't be easy. But I was like, is he going to be the one that ends up killing her? But no, she apparently killed herself, bit her tongue. And I love Ashley's like, oh my God, she $1 million babied herself. And I was like, is that how that... Well, because I remember, because Hilary Swank's character dies in that, but I didn't remember. I was like, wait, is that what her, like, is that how Hilary Swank's character dies in that? I've seen bits and pieces of that movie. Am I confusing that with another movie? You know, I don't remember. I think that's a Hilary Swank movie. Was it Morgan Freeman, or was it Clint Eastwood? Was it both? I don't remember now. But I've seen bits and pieces of that movie. I don't think I've ever seen that movie all the way through. I think because I knew it was a depressing movie, so that's why I was like super reluctant to watch it all the way through. But I was like, oh, that's interesting. And Homelander, her dying, he's like, no, she wouldn't do that. So I guess I have to go back on what I said. It does, once again, I flip-flop so much. I'm like, how much is his real feelings? How much does he really love her? And how much is just like, right, I love her because she loves me and she worships me and she sees me as a god and sees me as special. But it does seem like maybe he legitimately does love her. I don't know, maybe there still could be truth of like, no, it's because you were so important to me because you saw me as someone important. Either way, he's devastated by what happened to her, and he talks about, because I forgot what he was, he referenced something, and he was just kind of like, yeah, I mean, you know, you Jews, and he kind of like waves Chelsea off, but he's talking about how, right, all we do is save you, we're the gods, and what do? He's like, we give, and you take, and you get mad at us, but we're the gods in this situation. He even says like, right, this isn't even my birthday. I don't even know if I have a birthday, because I was, you know, immaculately made, essentially, because I was a test tube baby. So everything that led to me becoming what I am, and just him lamenting about all that and telling Chelsea, is like, you know what, Chelsea, you know, you go ahead and jump. She's like, no, I don't want to. He's like, come on, Chelsea, follow through. She's like, I don't want to. Please, I just want to. He's like, okay, you're going to jump. And he heats Visions and I guess scares and forces her to jump. And she does. And she goes splat. And just Ashley getting the camera guy is like, yeah, just lowering his camera, like, stop, just stop. And just, that's it. I guess no one saw Homelander on the roof. Once again, interesting timing. Just playing into the whole, how his origins kind of played out in the, the boys present Diabolical. I should just call it Diabolical for short, but nevertheless, how his origin played out a little bit in that. It seems like there's almost a parallel you can make there. Here, that's still a part of him, even since then, that hasn't gone away. Him handling things in that regard, so. And, you get that moment from the trailer where he's later on laying in Stormfront's bed, and you see, like, the blood patch, and he's just kind of rubbing it, like, he does miss her, so you do feel, once again, a little bad for him, but then you have to remind yourself, he is a garbage piece of shit, so. And then he gave that speech at the end of the episode when Stormfront was like, hey, like, he's going to donate $10 million to my charity. He's like, no, she's lying, and he's just, like, dropping the front. He's like, you guys aren't the heroes. I'm the hero. The fact is, you're trying to do this. You're trying to cancel me. The powerful and the rich. They're trying to, they're coming after me and trying to stifle me and stop me from doing what I want to do. And it's not just going to stop with me. It's going to go to you too. And in that moment, one of the households you cut back to is Todd. Now, I don't know whether what was being said resonated with Huey on any level. It could just be like, oh man, he's going wild, and my girlfriend is standing right next to him, so I feel concerned. I think that's what it more so is, but I think Huey knows what it's like to kind of be pushed around and kind of manipulated, and so I think there's some truth to that, but I think it was more so like, Starlight's like right next to you, and I'm freaking out and worried about her. But Todd starts, he has that look on his face like, oh yeah. I mean, because we've seen like how people can easily get radicalized, and we see that Todd is, I guess Todd is someone that was always beaten down, and like the rich and powerful have always kind of pushed him around, and he's someone that's like, no, I'm done being pushed around. So even without MM around, I think Janine's still going to get dragged into the center of this. I mean, I guess it makes sense too. Last episode, he was in a Homelander costume. That might not have just been an accident. It might be because he looks up to Homelander and it's like, oh my God, listen to Homelander. He speaks the hashtag truth. Yeah, the fact is he can be so open. And that's what I kind of got that feeling from the trailer. Like, oh, now that he's kind of more himself, maybe not everyone's going to love him, but a good chunk of people are. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see what the aftermath of it is, because at the end of the episode, he says his line of like, I'm the real hero, not you, me. And the room is silent. But we can see with Todd, it's resonating with him. It's probably resonating with some people in that crowd too, resonating to every household and people all around who are watching that. Oh my God, I also didn't talk about the Deeps movie. It was almost like a Lifetime movie. What was it? That V Network for women. And it was basically a reenactment of his escape, because obviously it's based on his memoir, Deeper, and the movie's called Not Without My Dolphin, which I'm like, okay, I'm assuming that's supposed to be in reference to the dolphin that he super, super unsuccessfully failed to save in season 1. I'm assuming it's supposed to be a reference to that. But I love that it's like, oh, who's playing Alistair? None other than Billy Zane, which he made a cameo appearance in the first season when they went to go see, Haley Joel Osment's character, the guy who could read minds. They were at a convention together. It was him, Tara Reid, and Haley Joel Osment's character. Was it Meisner or something like that? So it's just interesting to get Billy Zane back for this in this regard. And it's just like, you've left me with no choice, Alistair, but to run. And you're just like, oh, it's so cheesy. I love it. It's so good. But once again, that title, Not Without My Dolphin. And you're just like, oh, God, yes. So I love that. And then finally, there's everything with Huey. The person he ended up telling first and foremost was Starlight. So it's like, cool. So what do we do? How do we handle all of this? And Starlight wants to handle it together. But I think, and I really like this element of Huey kind of handling so much on his own this episode, because he's always had to rely on other people. You know, I mean, I think it almost kind of goes back to the conversation his dad had with him in season 1, like, right, you've never had the fight in you, which he kind of proved that he does time and time again. He's proven that. But it's more so like, right, I've been lied to for the past year. I got so close to Victoria. He even says, like, man, like, even her daughter would come around and we, like, hit it off and we'd play in the office and stuff. It's like, this is someone I legitimately considered a friend. We were in this battle together, and just to find out she's not only a soup, that's not the biggest issue. His girlfriend's a soup, but she's a serial killer. She killed Raynor. She killed the people in Congress. So that's all, like, kind of hitting him at once. So he ended up going, and also, once again, tying this back to Diabolical, I do like that we are getting something that, it was episode 2 that kind of touched on, like, oh, these parents drop off their kids at a place because those kids have powers and it's just too much for them to handle. So, we get a very similar thing to this when Huey's looking into the whole Red River thing. Because it turns out it's like I think it was an adoption agency thing. And I guess that's the thing Tony wanted her to tell her about. Like, right, this place that we kids who got superpowers were shipped off to. Because, Newman, or Nadia, is trying to keep secret about her super-powered background, especially when it turns out, oh, she's actually connected. I thought, like, oh man, like, because when my thought was, oh man, like, Stan wasn't there for her when she needed him, and maybe he turned her back on him, and, like, now that's what this is all about, a vendetta against Vought and stuff. But then we find out, no, Stan didn't officially adopt her, but he kind of took her in, essentially being her father. And it's like, oh, so he plays a grandfather role and everything too. You're so like, wait, so the whole you being against Vought thing, like, this is all a ploy, right? I guess maybe it's part of, like, Stan's long-term plan. Like he made it clear last episode, 5 years from now, he plans to be out of this whole superhero game. So I'm wondering, is some correlation there with what Victoria is trying to do? Is it some long con? Like, what is she planning? So, and she's saying that someone at Vought slipped up because Tony, she's like, I can't have someone showing up at my work calling me Nadia. Like, that's supposed to be tight-lipped. No one's supposed to know that. But I guess someone at Vought slipped up, and he ended up getting access to the information, knowing how to track her down in the first place. So that's interesting. And I also love that Huey ends up telling Starlight later on, like, we're kind of taking in a superpowered kid, you know, kind of inadvertently adopting a kid right now. But yeah, like, poor Huey, he's just like, yeah, he feels like he's a fuck up all around because he can't do anything on his own. Plus, it's like, cool, I was tricked and duped by Victoria and she was my friend. Now he feels so stupid about it. Because it's like, right, if it wasn't for, luckily, when it was all said and done, Starlight showed up and helped him in the long run when he was kind of stammering in front of her because she was asking questions like, oh, you didn't tell me about that guy Tony who came looking for me calling me Nadia? You didn't feel the need to tell me that? It's like, oh yeah, the guy was potentially off his meds, so I didn't take it much. But it's like, oh, me and Huey were getting into this fight, yada yada yada. And I love her being like, oh, you should cut her some slack, Huey. What? You're afraid to have a power. It's not a bad thing to have a powerful woman or something like that. You're like, ha ha ha. Ugh. So that's interesting. And once again, it ends with, plays into Huey calling Butcher. And it's like, maybe he shouldn't have done that. Maybe if he called him sooner, who knows? Like, the fact is, once again, Butcher was steps away from getting off that train, but he decided, screw that. Closed the door, went full speed ahead on the train because of the conversation he had with Huey. So we'll see in the long run whether that was the right move. There's going to be consequences either way. Probably going to be more fallout in this regard. So, once again, would Butcher have actually fully walked away? Probably not. Something would have eventually dragged him back, but this might have been the thing needed to nudge him in the right direction. And sadly, Huey inadvertently nudged him back into this fight that he very slim chance, but might have been walking away from. But we'll never know. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens next. Obviously, episode 3 is out as well, so I'm going to watch that after this and, then share my thoughts on that. But I'm very excited to see where episode 3 takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.